I've lived through 12 economic downturns. 12, and I'll tell you something most people don't want to hear. Every single time, I came out richer than I went in. Not because I was lucky, not because I had inside information, but because I understood something early on that most people take decades to figure out, if they ever figure it out at all. A recession isn't something that happens to you, it's something that happens for you if you're ready. Here's what most people don't understand right now. Everyone's watching the news, worrying about their job, their rent, the interest on their credit card. And while they're staring at that, the ground underneath them is already shifting. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying it because I've watched this pattern my entire life. The people who get hit hardest in a downturn aren't the ones who saw it coming and ignored it. They're the ones who were simply looking in the wrong direction. In 2008, while the whole world was panicking, I was working. I deployed over $15 billion into the market during that crash. Not despite the fear, because of it. When people ask how I stayed calm while everyone else was falling apart, my answer is always the same: I prepared before the storm. The preparation isn't complicated, but it requires thinking differently than most people around you. And that's the hard part. Wealth is a very specific game. It has clear rules, but most people were never taught them, so they play blind, work hard, spend freely, stress quietly, repeat. That's not building wealth, that's a treadmill. And when a recession hits and the treadmill stops, the people who understood the game were never standing on it. They built something else, something that doesn't stop when the economy does, something that actually speeds up when everyone else slows down. I've spent my whole life building that kind of machine, and in this video, I'll show you how. There are 5 principles I've lived by through every downturn I've seen. They're not complicated, they don't require a finance degree, but they will require you to look honestly at some things you'd rather not look at. By the end, you'll have a clear, practical plan, not theory, something you can apply starting today. But first, why most people lose before the recession even arrives. Let me tell you about 2 people I've observed over the years. Same background, same income, same starting point. The first, every time his salary went up, so did his life. A nicer car, a bigger apartment, more dinners out, pricier vacations. From the outside, he looked successful, and he felt successful. The second, every time her salary went up, she sat quietly. Her lifestyle barely changed. The extra money went somewhere and waited. For a while, nothing happened. Both felt fine. Then the economy slowed. Hours got cut. Companies tightened up. The first one panicked. His expenses had grown to match his old income, and he'd barely saved anything. He started missing payments, sold his car for less than he paid for it. He was underwater, and the water kept rising. The second one was calm. She was looking for undervalued real estate, companies whose stock had gone on sale. She was positioned to act while everyone else was just trying to survive. Same income, same starting point, completely different outcome. I call this the liquidity trap. And I've seen it more times than I can count. Here's what most people don't understand. Lifestyle isn't wealth. Lifestyle is a cost. The bigger it grows, the more exposed you become when conditions change. And conditions always change. That's not pessimism, that's history. I've kept large cash reserves ready throughout my entire career, not because I didn't know what to do with the money, but because I was waiting. Waiting for the moment when someone overextended would be forced to sell a valuable asset at a price that reflected their desperation, not its real worth. That moment comes in every recession, every single one. And I've learned this. The investor with cash and patience will always outperform the investor with ideas and no options. But here's what really matters. Liquidity isn't just a financial position, it's a psychological one. When you have a real cushion to live on, your thinking clears up. You stop reacting, you start seeing, and clear thinking during a downturn is worth more than any stock tip, trend, or prediction. So the first question worth asking yourself, if my income stopped tomorrow, how long could I last? That number tells you exactly how much risk you're carrying right now. Debt isn't a number on a screen or a monthly payment. Debt is borrowed time from your future. Every dollar you owe has already been spent. It's gone. You just haven't done the work to pay for it yet. I've watched more people fail because of leverage than almost anything else, and it's rarely one dramatic moment of borrowing too much. It's that the cost of debt compounds quietly in the background every single day, and almost nobody stops to calculate what it's actually taking from them. Simple example, put $4,000 on a credit card at 22% interest, make minimum payments. By the time it's paid off, you've returned over $8,500, more than double. And here's what almost everyone misses. That money wasn't just spent, it was stolen from your future. Every dollar going to interest is a dollar that isn't compounding, isn't growing, isn't working for you. Compound interest is the great wealth builder, but it works just as powerfully in reverse. With debt, it compounds against you, quietly, relentlessly, every single day. This matters enormously heading into a recession. When the economy turns, income often drops, a job changes, a business slows, hours get cut, income shrinks, but debt doesn't get the memo. It keeps charging at the same rate, on the same schedule, with no adjustment, so people enter a downturn already behind, already bleeding from debt they couldn't see, and then their income drops on top of it. That's not a rough patch, that's a spiral. If I were in your position today, I'd look honestly at every debt I carry, not to judge myself, but to see clearly. Because the people who come out of recessions ahead usually went in lean, not because they earned more, but because they owed less. Less obligation, more freedom, more options. The less you owe, the more clearly you think. And the more clearly you think, the better you act. This one is quieter than the others. You won't find it in any finance textbook. But in my experience, it might be the most powerful force keeping people from building real wealth. At some point, usually slowly, usually unnoticed, people start defining themselves by what they own. Their car says something about them, their apartment says something, their clothes, their phone, their vacations, these stop being purchases. They become identity, and once that happens, cutting back stops feeling like financial wisdom. It starts feeling like loss, like becoming someone smaller. I've seen people earning very good money who couldn't save a dollar. Not because they couldn't afford to, but because every dollar was tied up in maintaining a version of themselves. The raise got spent before it arrived. The bonus disappeared into a lifestyle upgrade. The gap between earning and keeping never closed. And nobody tells them this. It's not weakness, it's design. The consumer economy is very good at tying your self-worth to your spending. Advertising doesn't sell products, it sells belonging, it sells identity. It says, buy this, become this kind of person, and it works. I studied this as a young man, read everything I could find on human psychology and behavior. And here's what I've come to believe after a lifetime of watching it. The wealthiest people I know don't identify with their possessions. They identify with their principles, their patience, their long-term thinking. I've lived in the same house for decades. I drive a modest car. I eat simple meals most mornings. Some people think that's odd. I think it's freedom. When your identity isn't tied to what you spend, nothing can take it from you. Not a recession, not a market crash, not a job loss. You stay yourself, you stay calm, you stay in the game. If you stripped away everything you own tomorrow, the car, the apartment, the things you buy to feel okay, would you still know who you are? That's a serious question. And the answer tells you more about your financial future than any spreadsheet can. Most financial advice centers on willpower: spend less, save more, try harder, be more disciplined. I understand the appeal, but I've never found willpower to be a reliable strategy. It runs out every day. Under stress, fatigue, social pressure, the people I've seen build real, lasting financial discipline over decades didn't do it through force of will. They did it by designing their environment so the right behavior became the easiest behavior. I call this environment architecture. Here's how it works in practice. If every time you get paid, the money just sits in your checking account, you'll spend it. Maybe not all at once, but gradually, naturally, without drama. It'll go. But if a portion automatically moves to savings before you even see it, something different happens. You adapt to what's left. Your spending adjusts downward, and savings build without requiring any willpower at all. The decision was made once, at the system level, and then it runs on its own. Your social environment matters just as much. The people you spend time with shape your financial behavior more than almost any other factor. Not because your friends are bad people, but because humans are wired to mirror the behavior of those around them. We adjust to the norms of our group. It's natural. It's ancient. If the 5 people you spend the most time with spend everything they earn, you'll find reasons to do the same. If they think about the future, talk about building, take the long view, you'll naturally move in that direction. I had mentors early on who showed me what disciplined, patient thinking looked like from the inside. That changed everything about how I operated. Think carefully about both kinds of environment: your financial systems, automated savings, debt reduction, investment defaults, and your human environment, the voices you listen to, the communities you're part of, the people you admire. Both are shaping your outcomes right now, whether you designed them or not. The last principle ties everything together, because even with perfect systems and a strong environment, there's one more force working against you, the quietest one. And today, it's louder than ever. Every platform, every news channel, every app on your phone has one thing in common. They profit from your attention, not your well-being, not your financial health, your attention. And the fastest, most reliable way to capture attention is fear. The news doesn't just report what's happening, it amplifies the most alarming version of it, because alarm keeps you watching. Watching keeps advertisers paying. I've been very deliberate throughout my life about where I direct my attention during downturns. When markets fall, the headlines get louder, the predictions more extreme, the urgency overwhelming, and people react. They sell when they should hold, panic when they should think, make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. I've seen this in every recession I've lived through, and every single time the people who reacted to the noise paid for it. Here's what I do. When the noise gets loud, I turn it off. I go back to fundamentals. What is this business actually worth? What will it be worth in 10 years? Is this a real, lasting problem, or is it fear dressed up as a problem? Most of the time, it's the second one. The market isn't a weighing machine in the short term, it's a voting machine. And during recessions, it votes based on fear, but fear passes, value remains. This tax isn't money out of your bank account, it's something more expensive: clarity taken from your thinking, patience taken from your decisions, confidence taken from your judgment. And in a recession, clear thinking is the single most valuable asset you can have, more valuable than cash, more valuable than the best stock tip. Every great financial decision I've ever made came from stillness, not from reacting to what everyone else was doing, from quietly asking, what do I actually know to be true here? The most uncomfortable step, and the one most people skip. They have a vague sense of their finances, a rough picture, but they don't want to look too closely. I understand the impulse, but I've never seen a financial problem improve because someone looked away from it. This week, Sit down and build the full picture. Every monthly expense, every debt with its balance and interest rate, every subscription, every automatic charge. Then ask yourself one question. If my income stopped tomorrow, how many months could I last? If that number is under 6 months, that's your only priority right now. Not investing, not chasing the next opportunity, not optimizing anything. A 6-month cash cushion is the single most powerful move you can make before a recession. Because you can't think clearly when you're desperate, and you can't be patient in survival mode. The cushion buys you the one thing that matters most: time to think. Once you can see clearly, build. Automate your savings so the money moves before you touch it. Automate investment contributions if you have them. Remove friction from what you want to do more of. Add friction to what you want to do less of. Look honestly at where spending is tied to your sense of self, not to judge it, just to see it, because once you see it, you have a choice. Before you see it, you don't. Then attack your highest interest debt, not the largest balance, the highest rate. That's where the accelerator is running fastest. Cut power to it first. When asset prices fall, and they will, most people experience it as loss. I experience it as a sale. A business doesn't become worth less because its stock price drops. Property doesn't lose value because the market is panicking. Price and value are different things. That's the most important financial distinction I know. A recession is the best time in a decade to buy good assets at prices that reflect someone else's fear rather than their real value. But you can only do that if you prepared. Emergency fund in place, high interest debt reduced, cash available. If those aren't in place, you'll be one of the people selling, and I'll be one of the people buying. That's how wealth transfers during recessions. It's not random, it's a direct result of who prepared and who didn't. The last step is the one most financial advice forgets. Money isn't the goal. I've known people with enormous wealth who weren't free. And I've known people with modest means who were completely free. The difference was never the number in the account. It was whether the money served their life or they served the money. The best investment I ever made wasn't in a company. It was in my own thinking, reading, studying, understanding how businesses and human behavior actually work. That investment compounded for decades and never lost value. We talked about the liquidity trap, the danger of confusing a growing lifestyle with growing wealth, and why cash above all gives you options when others have none. The debt accelerator, how compound interest works just as powerfully against you as for you, and why entering a recession with low obligations changes everything. The consumption identity, how spending gets tangled up with self-worth, and why the most financially resilient people identify with their values, not their possessions. Environment architecture, why willpower alone is never enough, and how the right systems and the right people do more for your financial life than any amount of discipline. And the attention economy tax, how fear-based media drains clarity from your thinking, and why the quietest investors in the room are almost always the most successful. 4 steps: awareness, control, growth, freedom. Here's what I want to leave you with. I'm not nervous about what's coming, and I don't want you to be either. Nervousness is for people who didn't prepare. Readiness is for people who took the time, before it was urgent, to build something solid. The wealth gap that forms during recessions isn't created during the recession, it's created in the months before, in the quiet moments when someone decides to look at their finances honestly. When someone chooses to build a cushion instead of upgrading their lifestyle, when someone decides to understand what's happening instead of just reacting to it, those small, unglamorous, undramatic decisions are what separate the outcomes. The people who came out ahead were almost never the ones with the biggest income or the hottest investment. They were the ones who stayed calm, who prepared, who understood that a downturn is just a different kind of market, and that every market, even the difficult ones, holds opportunity for whoever's ready. You can be that person. The principles are simple, the plan is practical, the work is yours.